Hello, Omies, and welcome back into the Out of Our Minds podcast. And we're back.
And we're back.
Wait, did you see how the last episode ended with your face? Like, did you watch like the last clip visually?
Oh, I think I missed the last minute actually.
You have to go back and look at your face as the episode ended. It was only showing my face, like the AI only put my face.
Oh wait, no, I did see it because you like zoomed in and out, and I thought it was so funny.
I'm learning how to
I
use transitions.
Dude, guys, Nikki is fully embracing editing these episodes and like putting in the time to learn Premiere. It's been a journey. At first, Nikki was like, "What the fuck is Premiere? Like, why?" It's like it has a learning curve. It's just like a whole different language, and you were gonna like potentially quit. You were like, "Can you just edit all the videos?" And I was like, "Okay." So, anyways, you embraced it, and you're crushing it. Like the last episode had so much little fun edits in it. I was like, let's go. Visual pleasure.
Do you like the little Deborah part? Yeah, I appreciate it. I'm really learning. I'm embracing the beginner mindset. And for those of you who haven't been watching the actual episodes on Spotify or YouTube, definitely tap into like the visual element because we're going to be adding a little bit more spice to our edits.
Yeah.
And the last episode was a perfect place to do that because it was very educational and we had a lot of stuff to show you guys with the chart, and we hope you got a lot out of that. So let's drop into this episode. Today's episode is going to be a little bit more intuitive. We're really feeling into the changes and the shifts that are energetically happening, astrologically happening. And I'm sure you guys are, if you're tapped into this space, you've been seeing a lot of content around how different 2024 is going to be and just like how we need to approach our actions and taking like aligned action with our soul's desires differently this year. So Bella and I are going to talk a little bit about like how we have been feeling into this different energy. I'm going to talk a little bit about like what's happening astrologically with Pluto going into Aquarius. I am not a professional astrologer, so I am just learning off of TikTok, and I'm going to relay what has been resonating with me, and it really isn't that much. I did tap into some interesting information to find out like what category of your life this transit is going to be affecting you personally. So I'm going to share how to actually look at your chart and find that out. But yeah, there's definitely been a lot of changes in my own personal life that I also want to talk about, with moving to Arizona and listening to this like intuitive pull to land in a location that is more still and gives me the ability to tap deeper into my soul. So we're gonna talk about an array of things. What's up, guys? I'm Nikki.
I'm Bella. And this is the Out of Our Minds podcast, a playground for mystics and self-explorers to journey through the vast realms of the universe, cultural landscapes, and spiritual expansion.
Join us weekly as we dive into thought-provoking discussions that unveil the mysteries of existence and nurture the growth of our consciousness. I was actually curious before we started recording. Bella was sharing that there's been this wave of YouTubers coming onto their channels and talking about how they are quitting YouTube. And this is going to tie into what we're going to talk about today with the shifts that's happening. But I want to hear what you picked up on from this.
I've been noticing for like a solid month or two now, basically all around, starting around the end of the year of 2023 and just in this first like 3 weeks of January, that tons and tons of YouTubers posting videos being like, everything's changing, or quitting YouTube, or goodbye for now. Like so many people, like really big, and people who are like quite successful, have been at it for a while, or at least like a few years. And they're talking about like they're scaling back, or doesn't resonate anymore to do a video every week. Instead, they're going to do it when they actually feel inspired. Just all this huge theme of people either reconsidering and reconfiguring their businesses around YouTube, coming back to or kind of questioning the reason why they're YouTubing and just getting back to their roots, and because of that taking a step away. And when I originally saw these videos popping up, I was like, this is so aligned with the collective themes and the shifts that we're feeling and that people are reporting to us, basically, that people are just questioning what they're doing. They're ending cycles, a lot of death and rebirth, transformation. And what I just thought was so interesting is because today I tapped back into this YouTuber, Marquise Brownlee, who does a lot of like tech reviews, and he's like a super well respected YouTuber, did a video sharing his thoughts on why he thinks a lot of YouTubers are quitting, because he's not. He's like, you know, full steam ahead. And he just was talking about how basically it's like people start YouTubing with this whole notion of, I want to be creative, I want to make stuff. And when you're first YouTubing, all you're doing is making stuff, and you're making it for free because it's not successful yet and the channel has to grow. And then all of a sudden, when it scales, the nature of the business changes, because you have to probably like hire someone to handle inquiries. You have to do like sponsors, or depending on how you scale it, if you scale it in the typical way that people do, then it starts to change a bit. And so you have all these YouTubers that are like, oh my God, I'm like running this whole company and I'm spending all this time not being creative. And instead I have to be strategic. And instead I like chose to follow this route that was sort of prescribed to me, or I was told that I should do this. And so then they've lost the original essence of why they started it. And the whole reason it caught my attention with this shift we're feeling is because it's like the epitome of, even when people are maybe not like quote unquote tapped into like energy updates and planetary movements or whatever, people are still feeling this theme of transformation, putting things to rest, or just looking at things so much more clearly. And like something that Jenna Zoe has been talking about is that we'll see a truth basically surface, and it'll be very blunt and cold, but not in a negative way, just in like there's no fluff there anymore, and we just get to look at it. And that's what I think is happening with people who especially have been years and years into something, is they're like, is this how I want to do it? Like, I'm not really sure about this. And that's why I think individually for me, I've been feeling crickets in my mind in terms of a 2024 vision and what I want to do even just for this quarter. Like, I've had so little inspiration come to me, but I haven't been freaking out about it because it's felt so calm and so with this essence of, it's okay to slow down. It's actually on purpose. And then personally, Pluto has apparently been in my sign since 2006, and it's been like 16 years of intensity. And so I was explaining to Nikki that my mind has felt really empty, not in a bad way, just like it's just a weird feeling. And Nikki was like, it's like an analogy of when you finish a really long book and you read the last page and then you close it and you kind of just sit there like,
yeah. You like don't know how to feel. You're like, that and just happened.
Yeah. You're like satisfied and chill because you just read a book and just went on a whole journey, but you're also kind of like in nowhere land.
Yeah. Interesting.
And that's honestly, I think what this time feels like, and why it's the year of everyone being like, no more like hit the ground running Jan 1. Like, it literally is not working, and the collective energy is supporting that.
Yeah. Okay. I have so many things that I want to dive into with what you just said, but I feel like with the YouTubers coming on and talking about like, okay, this isn't aligned anymore, it has nothing to do with YouTube and that actual like specific creative venture. I think it has to do with what we were speaking about individually over a voice note, was that it is a time where we are getting very clear on what it is that's actually important to us. And I don't know if anyone out there listens to Blue's podcast, but she actually came on last week and did a whole episode how she's going to focus on being an artist. And she has this whole project where she's creating like a deck, like cards, and she's doing all the artwork on it. And she's putting so much energy and intention into each card that it's taking her like a good, almost like a year to create this deck. And she came on her podcast and she said, I'm not going to be making podcasts anymore. I don't know if I'm going to be back, but for right now, like, this is where my heart is calling me towards. And it really connects. Like, I didn't even put the pieces together when I was listening to that, but now that we're talking more about this, it really does feel like this is the year where there is no time to be putting your energy into things that aren't giving you like fulfillment or energy back, or just like a sense of joy or peace. Like, it is time to get super clear on where it is you are putting your time and your precious energy, and to really start thinking about like, what is my mission? What is my why? What do I want to create in this lifetime? And I feel like I've really been focusing on this. Like, I feel like I'm actually very connected with what I want to create in Q1, and it came to me just recently. Like, it kind of just dropped in. But before that, I was in exact same boat as like what you're experiencing, but I think we're on a little bit of different pages just because of our signs and where our personal energy is at, and just like our own individual timelines of what we're experiencing energetically and emotionally. But for me, I moving to Arizona have really been forced to like look dead in the eye at where I was placing my energy with things that just like weren't giving me a return. And when you live in big cities, it's so easy to get swept away with giving your energy away to things that don't give you that return back. And now living in Arizona, it's like I wake up each day and it's like I'm not going to go out and exert energy traveling to somewhere. Like I'm so remote now that it takes more energy and intention to actually waste my energy, if that makes sense.
Yes. So, yeah. And it's like the things that used to be enticing to you just kind of fall flat.
Yes. Like,
I don't need that.
I didn't even realize when I was living in LA, and then before that I was in Brooklyn and then New York City. It's like when I was living in all of those places, you don't even understand the other way of living because you're just so in it. You're so tapped into like quick dopamine and just like fast ways of like gaining pleasure, and there's no like, okay, this is a project I want to work on. It's going to take me a long time. I'm going to like wake up each day and be present with this process. I mean, you can do that. It just takes more effort to like place yourself on that path when you have so many distractions around you. It's possible. There's a lot of people out there doing it. I'm not saying it's impossible. For sure. But I think my personal journey, like I had to be pushed into this place of solitude and stillness in order to really start taking like that energy audit on like what the fuck is actually important to me. And like now's the time to really hone in on that. And I think taking away all the things that aren't important to me, it has left me with this clarity of like, okay, this is important, and I can list out like 5 things on my hand that I'm giving my energy to, and I feel really good about those 5 things. So I think this is like where my head is at with 2024, and if you guys are resonating with this, it may also be manifesting in your life as just like even more discomfort with the things that you're giving your energy away to. And like how Bella was saying, Jenna Zoe was sharing that it's going to be so just like here it is. like there's no fluff. It's just, it is what it is.
Yeah, I really recommend her human design app. Is so freaking good. She shares a lot of like daily updates in there, but she wrote 2024 is such a sea change compared to 2020 to 2023, where life has used very heated and charged methods to make us change in the last 3 years. Now it's using quiet and emptiness to help us see everything for what it truly is. We're going through a reassessment right now. What matters to us, what actually feels good to spend time on the inside, and getting rid of things might still be hard, but it's going to feel now that it's our only choice, a no-brainer. So we'll do it regardless of how hard or scary it is. Now is a great time to think of what you actually value and to let yourself not value the things that you told yourself you should because the rest of the world does. Spoiler, they probably don't either, but you just have to go first and be the permission slip.
Yes.
I mean, so freaking on point. And I really like her emphasis of like that it feels like there's just no choice anymore, and it just is what it is. And it's like the charge has been taken out of the previous, revelations of like, oh my God, this job isn't aligned for me, and if you got let go, it would have been devastating. And now you're like, yeah, I really can't do this anymore. I'm not gonna go.
I'm good.
Like,
I'm gonna tap out of this one.
I'm done.
Yeah.
Like, it's so simple, and I 100% have felt that too, because in starting this year, it's just such a stark difference from a year ago of when I feel like I had like 5 to 7 projects happening at once, and now I have like 2 major things that I focus on, at least that mentally I like have categorized. And I'm like, yeah, that's kind of the only thing I'm interested in nurturing right now is like these 2 to 3 like areas of my business and life. And it's just the energy behind it feels so supportive because it's like taking the drama out of it in a way.
Yeah.
Like it's not so dramatic anymore to be like, this is not a line for me and I need to make it a big deal and I'm going to burn it all down. It's like, it just is what it is. And that's huge, I think, to really lean into that, because that's where then, because there's less noise, it is the time to listen to your authority, your intuition, to listen to what actually matters, and to use that as the number one strategy in life, because the road has been cleared. And so now you just see everything a lot better, and then the results are going to be what you want. And even like in the past few days, I've felt so just dry and off, and I've been like, I have nothing to say. I like have no ideas coming to me. And so as we were planning for this episode, I was just telling Nikki, like, yes, everything you're saying is aligned, but I just need to let you know I'm drawing blanks right now. But because I knew that I need to wait to respond to things, like I'm going to have an intuitive pull when it's aligned, I just let myself go about my day intuitively. And then when I sat down a few hours before recording and decided to watch YouTube casually over lunch, boom, the thing dropped in, and I was like, oh yeah, that's what I want to talk about. Like, oh yes, that's correct. And then the feeling is so much better than if I had just been forcing myself to find clarity and to make a plan anyway. Like, that's kind of an example of how I think it's so much more supportive and is the perfect time to lean in to what your intuition is telling you and what you actually value.
Yeah. Do you think that, like, I feel like with Pluto going into Aquarius, it's like going to be a big death and rebirth cycle of I don't know, I just feel like all these like political systems and like the illusion and the veil is going to be lifted in a way that it hasn't during our lifetime yet. And I feel like this all connects, like it all connects.
Yeah.
When you feel like, okay, you can see behind the veil and more people are awakening and we're becoming very aware to like what is an illusion and what's actually true to us, then you see that in the external, in the collective, and then you really have no other choice but to then apply that to your inner path and your inner world to say like, okay, for example, let's say you're like understanding now the illusion of some corporate systems and you yourself are like working at a corporate job and it's just not feeling aligned for you to be exerting your energy towards something that isn't giving you that return anymore. That is going to correspond, right? Like that collective energy of the veil being lifted and things shifting and changing and the darkness coming to the surface. That's also going to allow you to shift what it is you actually are valuing. And I say that with quotation marks because I feel like it's not even like I valued this and now I value this. It's like, did you actually ever value this? And we're awakening to like that. And then it's like, okay,
right.
Now we can put our attention and energy on what we actually want to create.
Totally. Yeah. This is why I think it's also interesting when you do operate from a perspective of being tapped into the unseen, being more of really just embodying the fact that we are energetic beings, is then you don't necessarily need to wait to see a shift in physical reality because it's starting inward and that ripples out. Like my physical life setup is really not, and like nothing that crazy different is happening around me. But when I walk outside, I feel it.
Something's
and I know
different.
that it's true.
Yeah.
And I know that like all the, like there's so many construction people on site right now because all this stuff is like the bunch of houses in the neighborhood are getting like repairs, and somehow I'm like, I know that even these guys and like the people walking around, everyone is feeling it even if they're not conscious of it. And maybe in the past I would have been like, wow, there's so much going on, so much hum and buzz, like motivation, woohoo, but it's not that. Like even the world can still be going and the gears can still be turning, but the energy input and the consciousness in it is completely different.
Yeah, I feel that. I also like, I don't know, I can't help but think about me moving to Arizona was like, I don't know, I feel like with like the election coming up, being in a big city for someone who's like sensitive and wanting to like be on this journey of like healing my nervous system. And I don't think literally feel like Peter and I's souls like led us into this part of our chapter. Yeah. Part of our journey where the chapter is of like being away from the chaos.
Totally.
So
yeah.
I say this because I also just saw a TikTok of a girl talking about how Peter actually sent it to me. And she was like, move to a secondary city. The second you turn 30, get out of the big cities and go live somewhere where you can actually save money and have stillness and quiet. And I say this because I feel like there are specific chapters and moments where we're meant to live in big cities, but if you're feeling like the intuitive pull to get out of New York or get out of LA, please listen to that.
Yeah.
Please listen to
sure.
that, because there's big shifts that are happening in the world, and maybe your soul is leading you down a path where it's preparing you to be maybe away from a little bit of the chaos that is to come with like the elections and the political climate of all these changes happening. And I don't say that to induce fear. It's really more from a stance of like empowerment, of really honing in on where your intuition is pulling you. Because even when I received this like intuitive hit with Peter and I, like we bought these Airbnb properties in Arizona and we had no plan to come live in them. Like we were just going to list them and then stay in LA. But when we stayed here during the summer, it was like, whoa, this piece, like nothing compares to this. Like this is definitely what we're meant to lean into. So we just took the leap and moved into one of the properties, and it was such a scary thing. And I want to talk a little bit about this because I feel like this is what we need to talk more about with listening to your authority and listening to your intuition, is that sometimes there will be a bit of like fear there, and there will be the mind telling you all the reasons why you shouldn't do something. But listening to your authority and to your intuition is such a beautiful process, because then once you get over that hump of like feeling a little bit unsettled, like you're in a new environment, you're in a new location, you're like not in your normal routines, you lost all the familiar places, the familiar faces are not there anymore. Once you settle.
That was you when you first moved. You called me and you were like, what have I done? I'll never forget that. I mean, obviously we both knew it was going to pass, but it's such a great example of like Nikki FaceTimed me and was like, this was like days after you had moved, and you were like, I don't have anything here. I don't have my coffee shop. What am I going to do? Like, it was like, fuck, what have I done? And I was like, and it's just a perfect example of sometimes you follow your gut and your soul led, but it's still like uncomfortable. And you're like, oh my God, fuck, like this is intense. Or like, oh my God, I'm not making as much money anymore or whatever. Like, anyway, sorry to interrupt. I just had to say of like, that's exactly what happens is.
But you know what it is? Like when you take that intuitive leap into something, I feel like even in the midst of like me calling you and crying to Peter and like freaking out over like, what the fuck did we just do? There was still a part of me that saw the bigger vision, that saw me in peace and in my routines and in my new rhythm and expanding my business and like finding real happiness in this new location. I could still see that. It was still something that my soul was like, no, this is the bigger picture. And I was able to consciously navigate that discomfort from a place of higher awareness, where I was like, I know I'm going to get through this. Like, I know this is going to pass. But that comes from years of like diving into this spiritual work and understanding the concepts of surrender, faith, trust. And like, these aren't little pretty words that just hang up on signs in Karen's home and like decorate a kitchen. It's like, these words are real. They carry real like potency to them that help you navigate your path. And when I say that word surrender, it's like in those moments of discomfort, can I accept that I'm feeling uncomfortable and still allow myself to know that there will be peace that comes on the other side of this? So yeah, I don't know. I'm curious if like you've ever dealt with a similar experience of like making a big leap and listening to your intuition and then having that moment of like fucking frailing.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yes, dude. I'm remembering so vividly right now when I first quit my job in May 2022. My last day was May 10th. I was in Austin, Texas, because then the next day I was going to fly to Costa Rica for like 3 weeks to go meet up with my friend Ava. And I like had my last day, and I remember I've like told the story about the last day where they do benedictions and they like everyone says all these nice things about you. And then I like logged off for the last time, and I had like 18 hours where I had to switch Airbnbs and I was completely alone. I was like there in Austin for a weekend with Milan and friends, and then they went back to like home, and I stayed to then catch my flight like a day later to Costa Rica. And I had this 18-hour period of being alone. And I remember checking into my second Airbnb and just sitting on the bed and crying and being like, oh my God, what the fuck am I doing? Like, I was so freaked out. Like, I didn't have a plan, okay? I had a very, very part-time freelance job that was just enough to pay the bills. I was living off savings, had just left my job. That was like a great job. Like, nothing actually wrong with it other than the fact that it just wasn't aligned anymore. And I was just sitting there like distraught. And I remember just crying and being like alone and like freaked out and just so like borderline panicking. And I remember it was so perfect because that night, Jenny Edition was doing like a holotropic and Reiki healing session for her membership. And I remember like getting into bed alone at this little Airbnb and like logging into the session and just being so thankful that that was a thing that was happening. But it was, my emotions were insanely intense and I was so freaked out. And I just completely plunged into the unknown and went to Costa Rica and was like, I don't have a fucking plan. I'm just going to send it. I'll just try things. And I like started like a mini Patreon at that time for just my own social media page, which at that time was under 2,000 followers. Like, it was like, I was just fully like, okay, fuck, I guess I got to figure it out. And it was really terrifying. Like, it was very, very scary. And I had a lot of moments on the Costa Rica trip. Shout out to Ava. She was like such a clutch part of that because I would talk to her about how badly I wanted the success that I had been visioning of and that I knew it was right for me to leave my job, but it was so fucking scary. And yeah, it was a lot. And it was just, I think the difference between that time frame and now is making those leaps now. I think we'll have that scariness, but it's just going to hit different, I think, in a way where it's calmer and not as like dramatic.
You're saying with like the shifts in the collective energy?
Yeah. And just like, I think the way we've all, I mean, part of it depends on how you've personally evolved and like where you're at in your journey. But I also just think that the collective energy is more supportive of those shifts and it won't feel as dramatic.
Yeah.
Like, yes, obviously the reality hitting of, like, for example, quitting your job, the reality will hit of a drop in income, a drop in security and whatever, but that it's just not as like everything's burning down. You're kind of just going to sit there and be like, yeah, I think I needed to do this. And there's a lot of things I don't know what to do right now, but I'm meant to be here.
I also feel like it's dependent on how present you are. Like the way that all of these energetic shifts are going to affect you is highly dependent on how present you are able to get with your emotions and with yourself with a capital S. And when you are present, you can navigate anything. Like there can be a huge shift happening and like chaos occurring amongst the collective. But if you're present with your own self, you'll have that connection to your authority to guide you on that journey. And that is what allows you to take like the highest route. And usually it has like the least road bumps, because when you're not listening to your authority, that's when you're gonna like get hit with the lessons and it's gonna get louder and a little bit more uncomfortable. So with all these big shifts happening, I would highly suggest doubling down on your practices and really honing in on the things that allow you to get present, whatever that is, whether it be a meditation practice or drinking your tea outside in the morning with the sun on your face, like whatever that thing is for you that just gives you that like, like that sense of connection to yourself, and really hone more in on those things. Like even when we're talking about like the things that, taking an audit of like where you place your energy and the things that give you that return back, we're not talking just about careers and like a mission and a bigger why. Think about the little tiny things you do each day. And now is the time to get like even more picky about like the tiny little areas of your life that you give your energy to that don't give it back in return. Maybe it's a relationship where you feel like it's kind of like fizzling out and that person isn't showing up in the way that maybe you're showing up, and you're feeling like the bridge is not, it's not a two-way street anymore. So I'm just saying like these tiny examples of like even like the shows you watch or where you are like programming yourself and programming your mind, the music you listen to, the way you move your body, like what are the things that like truly light you the F up. And you can even connect to your authority to figure out like yes or no for the things. Would you have any insight into like how someone would do that?
Yeah, for sure. I've actually been thinking about this because another reason why this is such a potent time to be tapped into yourself and to opt for stillness over numbing and opt for presence basically and cultivate that presence is because then it becomes about training your intuition so you can actually discern what it sounds like. Because sometimes if we've been numbing our intuition or we don't really know what the texture of it is, it's hard to let it guide you. And so, for one, like, I guess with the practical example of how to like train your intuition and to listen to it more, the foundation of this is the stillness and presence and to really like try to eliminate the overconsumption of things in your life, and that applies across all things, right? Like you know, opting for the morning routine that doesn't include scrolling on the phone. Like if a show is not resonating with you and you have a little inkling about it, listen to that, stop watching, right?
Yeah.
Like if a freaky movie, horror movies are not your thing anymore and you're have a whispering voice that's like, I don't want to watch anymore, tap into that. And on top of that, I think this is the time where starting with those tiny little things of, for example, if you have gut sacral authority in human design, this would be like your sacral is filled in or defined, colored in, then giving yourself, giving yourself examples of yes and no. Starting really small is key. So like start with food or like a TV show. Do I want to watch The Crown or do I want to watch F1 Drive to Survive? Okay, which one is like pulling you more? Great. Then like scale up from there. And then the other thing on top of this, if it's not sacral, for example, and you have splenic, which comes in instincts, you want to start to take note of the voice in your head and the things that drop in that feel like it's a statement, and write it down in your phone, let it simmer, and then wait and see if maybe later you end up following that, you know, instinct and it feels good, or if you ignore it and then you have the retrospective perspective to realize that it was correct. So it's like just add into your life the intention of taking note of the voice in your, you know, body / mind, and the difference between when you're trying to reason through something, because there's like, it's all about getting to know the voice, right? Like there's a distinct feeling of a gut pull versus an instinctive drop in. And the way to tell those is you just need to start getting curious and almost like literally writing down in your phone what the voices are telling you. And then as you go through life and you say, okay, I'm going to try following that instinct and see what happens from it, you will start to be able to tell which voice is what, and if it was coming from a highest self or if it was coming from fear or like shoulding or conditioning or whatever.
You like start to develop like a relationship to it, and you get familiar with like the way it communicates.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I feel like that's why also if someone's listening and you don't necessarily feel tapped into the collective energies, sometimes that's like and if you want to take that as an opportunity to start inward and to start actually like don't consume so many things about what other people are telling you and come back to that still quiet place, because that's what gives the vehicle a bit of like a cleanse and a reset to be able to actually tune in. Like the reason Nikki and I feel this is because we're aware of the times when we're starting to not, you know, get ideas drop in, or we're starting to numb our intuition or silence it, and we make those conscious shifts to turn back inward. And as soon as you do that, that's when you walk outside and you can pick up on the energy and be like, oh, okay, like, yes, this shift is happening. Or like, okay, yes, I've been living intuitively and it's led me to this place. But it really all starts with that inward thing, which is why the theme comes back to like, there's no more drama. You need to just commit to what matters to you and let that reset your system. And then you will be in tune with the collective movement, and it will then kind of like bolster up your efforts even more.
I find that when you're connected to your intuition, I don't know, I'm like thinking about just like the vast difference of how I feel in life when I'm connected versus when I'm not connected. And the way that I feel connected is through like my meditation practice, and like really listening to the intuition allows you to have like this feedback loop of like
Yes.
even stronger connection. And then you get another hit. And I've been telling you this, that I've really been like listening to that inner like intuition when it comes to like the way that I work out and the way that I've been like taking care of myself. And it's been such a beautiful process. And it's such a, like, the difference in how I show up in life when I'm connected to my intuition versus when I'm like maybe more in like a numbing state. It's crazy. Like when I'm numbing, you get this voice in your head that's saying like, oh, you should be doing this, you should be doing that. And it's like all this guilt and shame, and you like feel yourself misaligned, but like you can't stop numbing because the thing that you're numbing with, whether it be like TV or scrolling, you like literally feel like addicted to. Like it's like a binky that you're like fucking like a pacifier. And then the second you're done with that type of like behavior, and you're more in alignment, which is what I feel right now. I really do feel like I'm tapped into a very aligned place, and I've been very consistent with my practices. The way that I show up to like nourish myself and the things that I'm doing, it doesn't feel like a force at all. It feels like this very flowy process where I get to enjoy being in the present moment of the process itself. And it's so freaking fun and fulfilling. And like you get lost in like this like trance state, whether you're creating or writing or working out or like eating breakfast or cooking. Like life becomes this like intuitive dance of like, this is what I want to do. And I say this with like, I have the masculine structures in place now. So like I know when I'm going to the gym, but when I get there, it's like this flowy process of like, what do I want to work out today? Like what muscles do I want to dive into? And it's like, I don't know, it's crazy. Like when you're really tapped into your intuition that way, life just feels good. Like it feels good. And I really want to prioritize more of that this year. And if you're listening to this and you're feeling inspired and maybe you're more in like the numbing state right now, I would say just start to take that energy audit, like start small. Where is it that you're giving your energy that like you can really start to regain your power and your energy back from? And once you start small and start like gaining that inner power to say no to things, you're going to notice the ball rolling in a different direction, and it kind of just like takes off by itself.
Yeah. I'm curious what any other like big themes that you've seen people talk about with the shift and like how it might affect people? Like, is there anything notable there that you wanted to share?
Yeah, I would say I was really interested in finding out like what category of my life Pluto and Aquarius is actually going to be affecting. I'm going to post the TikTok with the girl that explains how to figure that out in your chart in the show notes. But essentially you have to look at where Pluto is transiting in your chart during this weekend, and it will show you like the actual Pluto sign, what house it's aligned with. And I can't remember the number house mine was, but it was all about career. Yours was about finances. But you can view this as like there's going to be a lot of like death and rebirth cycles for you personally within that category. And you can imagine it like, what are the lessons that my soul came here to learn in this specific category of my life? And I don't know if it resonates with you, but it definitely resonates with you on the career front for me. And it feels like it's coming at a time that's super aligned as well. Like I'm almost feeling like I'm turning a page with like my path with my career, and just you and I have been talking that like we've been really honing in on like that bigger mission and that bigger why. So definitely check that out, and you can see where it is you want to pay extra attention to. And that can be like your little project area. So when you go to do some journaling and you're maybe wanting to dive into like subconscious work with bringing limiting beliefs to the surface, you can focus on that category if it feels aligned for you, and really start asking yourself like, where am I still holding on to like limiting beliefs or illusions or false perceptions around this category of my life? Because really we live in this like very limitless matrix where anything is possible. So like if you think about that category that Pluto is transiting, like where is it that you can take the veil and lower it even more and like access even a more abundant grasp on this category? Like I just want to reiterate, like literally anything is possible. I've been in this mindset of just thinking and reminding myself of this. And like I wake up each day and remind myself like that vision that I have, it's fucking possible. Like every single vision that you hold is a possibility that already exists. And I know I'm going off on a tangent here, but I just was in a meditation a few hours ago and this message came through of like, you're already in the timeline. Like you're already there. That vision that you hold, you're already in that timeline, but now it's just time to take the action that aligns with who that person is in that timeline. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And that's also removes the idea that you are like separate or not good enough yet. And you just get to
you're there.
Match up with that person.
You're already there. And then if there is like discomfort that arises now that you're in that timeline, that's the exact belief that you want to look at and start to dive into the work of like, okay, like this is literally showing me what wants to be thrown out, what wants to be dissolved, what wants to be removed from my system. And it's not like, oh, I need to fix myself in order to like become this like more aligned person or like unblock myself. Like you're already fucking there. Like,
yes. Yeah. Yeah. I really feel that type of approach to noticing even like limiting beliefs come up, because I've like this week noticed a few times where I'm picking up on like this theme / story that I hear within me. It's not like that loud, but it's just like there's like little remnants of it. Of sometimes I tell myself that I'm like not a good manifester. I don't know. I just sometimes I'm like, you need to like be better at manifesting. Like you're not that good at it. Like maybe you should blah, blah, blah. Like I just kind of either compare or catch myself thinking that I'm not good at manifesting things. And that has come up in such a clear way that has been free of judgment and has just made me be able to notice that the story exists, and then to be like, okay, we're just going to be a little bit more conscious about our relationship to like the idea of being a manifester and being someone who like makes things happen in a manifestation way.
Yeah.
And it's so much less charged, and it's like a weed in a garden. You're like, okay, you're not like the cutest, but you're also not like that much of a problem. If I really want to get rid of you, I'll just like kind of tear this out quickly and we're done.
Yes.
Like it's not that big of a deal. And it pops up sometimes and you just handle it. You just deal with it. And that's, I think, another way that probably is something to lean into is as these things come up, they don't need to be dramatic. Like I know I'm saying that a lot, but it really changes the way that you approach healing. And it's not this like nebulous, dark, heavy thing. It's just like, okay, it's there. That's okay. It's fine. Let's just deal with it.
And you already did the work of becoming aware of it. Like, I think that's one of the most life-changing things when you think about limiting beliefs and subconscious work. A lot of people will be like, oh my God, like I'm aware that I'm thinking this way or I believe this. And then they'll freak out and think like, I'm broken. I need to fix myself. You have already done the work, the hardest part of becoming aware of the pattern itself, because we have all these patterns that maybe we're not aware of. Like even that story of I'm not a good manifester, you literally have full awareness that was a story, and you were able to like be like, whoa, my mind is thinking that now. Because you have gained awareness of it, it no longer has its like claws on you. You know what I'm saying? Like you did the hard work.
Right. Yes. It's like that is where this whole concept of seeing the truth and seeing past the illusion is happening, because it's exactly right. Like instead of me hearing that story and then just opting for it to be true, I'm already like, it's just made up. Like I see that it's in me and I'm like, okay, I can see how I've been operating from that. But also I already understand that like, it's just not true. Yeah. And that's half of it. And that's like that's the whole concept too of, we just started reading A Course in Miracles, or at least I started it. We're going to be reading it together. And anyways, I was talking today, I was reading a part of it that was talking about, just this concept of starting to see reality for what it is. And that as soon as you see a little bit deeper past the veil, the truth becomes very obvious. And it's not something that you have to like wrestle or like fight to see. It's kind of hard to explain, but that example of me seeing that false story feels parallel to this concept in A Course in Miracles that's all about how we start to see the truth, and it has a certain resonance in the body that that suddenly you've seen past a veil and you're like on the other side of it, because it's so plain that then it becomes very obvious what is not true, because you can just tell the difference in the true versus untrue statement.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. It's almost like this like vibe of like, wait, what? Like, what?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, like the story.
Does that make sense? Like when you
yes.
have the awareness around a belief, you're just like, wait, what? Like, why?
Right.
It just doesn't even,
that
like the logical mind can even be like, that literally just doesn't even make sense. Like for the manifesting belief, it's like, we're all manifesting 24/7. You can't be good or bad at manifesting. It's just like the ability to hone in on like a specific intention, which we all have that capacity to do. So it's like even to logically think about the belief itself and dismantle it and like take away the legs, and then the table has nothing to stand on. It's like, okay, this is so blatantly a lie.
Yeah, the analogy or / story that the author of the book I'm referencing, there's A Course in Miracles, the actual text, and then what we're reading is A Course in Miracles Made Easy, which is like a companion book for it. And he tells the story of that he used to go to the movies when he was young every week with his friends, and they would go watch these like monster movies, and the like fake effects were so obvious that like the friends would just like turn to each other and be like, haha, like that's so fake. And he was like, that is what starts to happen in your reality, is it's really obvious when something is just not real. Because like, for example, in these old movies, like when you're watching Star Wars, you know when a effect is like literally made like from mechanicals or from CGI, and the whole point is in your own life, that's the feeling you get, is you're like, that's just not real.
Yes.
Okay, I can see that, and I see how it was real to me at some point, but it's just not real. It's fake. It was made up.
And boom. To connect that to like harnessing in on your inner power, you can access your inner power with more like clarity and less resistance. I would say less resistance is a better way to describe it. When you understand like the opposite of tapping into your inner power would be believing the illusion and the lie. Like as soon as you're like, okay, wait, this limiting belief is such a lie, or this is just like all made up and I live in a reality where I can literally believe anything I fucking want, then accessing your inner power to, let's say, like take the action towards the thing that your mind was telling you couldn't do. All of a sudden it's like, yeah, obviously I'm going to fucking do that. Like it becomes very easy to listen to your soul. And I feel like this is kind of like the whole point of this conversation we're having. It all really ties into the same undertone of like the veil is thinning in your personal life with the way that you relate to the like matrix and how you're going about living your life, and in the collective with like powers and government and like all the structures and the rule, like things are thinning out. The illusion is thinning. And if you've been on this spiritual path or awakening journey for a few years now, you probably have had the awareness that a lot of people are going to gain this year. And just have compassion for people as they navigate that journey, because you may have navigated something that maybe a majority of the collective is going to be navigating this year that you went through, let's say like 3 years ago. And remember that like, it's not about, I heard this once and it resonated with me in the past few days with some of this content around 2024, and I want to share it here. Remember that when we are navigating this big shift and like Pluto going into Aquarius and maybe some of these like structures being dismantled and the veil thinning, that it's not about winning or being on a certain side or being like, I told you so. We're all on the same team. Like we got to remember that. And I even want to like keep that top of mind for myself, because it's very easy for the ego to come into this process of like the veil thinning and being like, I fucking told you so. Like, and to remember that like we're all on this journey together. And if we can help each other and just like hold each other as we're becoming aware of some shit that may be hard to see, like, I know I went on a ramble there and totally lost my original train of thought, but that was something that popped in my head that I did not want to let go of, because I know I would have forgot to say it.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. It's like it's so not even like personal in a way that obviously the general mechanics and timeline individuality of life still are relevant. Like everyone's going to be going through their own thing. Everyone's on their own timeline, their own experiences. Like this is just really, yeah, whenever I think of these things, it's like I'm aware that there could be a person in a different part of the world who is just not at all experiencing this. But then I think about humanity as one big organism, as one, which is truly what we are. And like I zoom out even more to see the whole universe. And then I'm like, yeah, it's like, you know, my pinky might be like broken right now, but the rest of my body is like still moving forward. I don't know if that makes sense. Like just that there's still going to be individuation and like the way that all the stories play out differently. But I 100% believe in like this collective theme that we all are tapping into in some way, consciously or unconsciously, that is this shift into the Aquarian age, into individuation, into awakening on massive scales, into integrating our shadow. Like it's all happening, and every person plays their perfect role in it. And that's where you release the judgment or the ego of like, well, I have realized it, and so I'm like ahead of the game. And it's like, not really. Like the body has different organs that play a different role. Like we're all just playing our role.
Right. Yeah. I don't know if you heard anyone talk about with the astrological shift happening that Pluto going into Aquarius hasn't happened since the 1700s, and it was aligned with the French Revolution. So if you listen to a lot of astrology, you'll hear people relate certain like transits or just like astrological points to history and what was happening at that point when maybe something was occurring at that point in time, you know? So people are relating Pluto going into Aquarius of when it last happened, which hasn't happened in any of our lifetime. It was in the 1700s when the French Revolution was going on. So there's going to be like this revolution vibe, I feel like, of the people coming together
Totally.
to even like lift the veil even more and to be like, we no longer subscribe to this way of living or this way of being told what to fucking do. And I do sense that there's going to be a really big shift that way. And to also remember with Pluto going into Aquarius, this is going to stay this way for the next, is it 22 or 20 years? It's a long time. Yeah. So this isn't like an overnight thing. This is going to be like a slow burn. But I personally feel that there's going to be a big shift within 2024 where things are not going to be looking the same.
I feel like the saying the revolution will not be televised is really relevant because I think this is an inner evolution. Revolution, I mean, it's already happening. People are like, we're going to war.
Like there's already a war on our frequency and like a war happening within our minds and mind control and programming. Like it's already happening. And again, not to induce fear, this is to empower you. If you're listening to this podcast, you're probably someone who already is on a journey of like choosing what programs your mind and being mindful of like watching specific news outlets. And this is a time to hone in on your personal energy field and take power back over attuning yourself to a specific frequency, because the war is happening within our own energetic fields within ourselves. And it starts with you harnessing into your own frequency to be the rebellious act of like fighting against this war. It does start with doing the inner work. Like, not to talk about us versus they, but like they know that putting people into a state of fear makes people very programmable and easy to manipulate. And totally. It's like that's the frequency where we can become enslaved to a power that we don't want to be becoming enslaved to. So it really is honing in on your own energetic frequency and understanding that like the spiritual work or the practices are not just like fun and games. It's a matter of...
This is real shit, y'all. We're preparing. No, but actually, like, seriously, it's it's not even an exaggeration. Like, it is an inner revolution. It is about us reclaiming our inner power, because the foundational principle of the entire really world that we speak from and how we operate is that the inner world equals the outer world. And when you rewrite the story inside, it changes everything outside.
Yeah.
And if we want a different reality, it starts with us. Fucking Michael Jackson was right.
Why? What's the song?
It's like, if you it's the song about like, I'm looking in the mirror. It's like I'm asking him to change his ways. It's like, if you want to make the world a better place, then just make that change. It's like about starting, like, changing yourself first.
Yeah. Hell yeah. That
Glad
literally is
that.
it. And you'll notice that, like, when you do the inner work, you'll start to shift into a reality where you are surrounded by people that are also on that, like, frequency of peace and empowerment. And I saw a video where they were saying, like, it's not like you won't be exposed to other frequencies or people still experiencing fear. Maybe you'll still see it on your phone and social media and the news, but it won't affect you like the way that it would if you were still in that vibration. And know that this still leaves room and space for feeling emotion and holding yourself with grace and ease. But I think inner peace really is achieved when you learn how to be with the discomfort, how you actually navigate holding chaos. And this is going to be especially important as we go through this revolutionary vibe of whatever the fuck is going to happen. This is going to be a true test of, like, how much inner stillness and inner peace can you really hold within, while maybe there is big cycles of death and rebirth occurring amongst the collective.
Amen. I was just going to share, like, with astrology and all this idea of, like, planetary shifts and how it affects the collective energy. Like we said at the beginning, neither of us are, like, professional astrologers. However, I was just thinking about this, like, very simple analogy, and this is basically a reason why I put any weight on it at all. Like, I'm the type of person where I'll read, you know, an astrological energy update, and I tend to just naturally have a critical eye on things, just because that just comes naturally to me. And I think it's good to be a little bit curious and not just accept everything at face value, obviously. But the way that I see it is, it's like, if we're all hanging out in a house and Joe is about to come in 5 minutes, like, the energy of Joe coming into the room is going to change how everybody else feels. And then if we are, like, deciding to move the couch around, it's going to change the flow of how people walk around the room. And then if there's, like, a meal in the oven coming, it's like, oh, the kitchen starts to smell a certain way, and everybody knows that it's also coming, and so maybe they start to get hungry and they're salivating. And then when the meal is ready, it changes how everybody interacts, and they'll go and sit around the table. And maybe it's that, probably if there was, like, a legitimate scientist listening to that, they'd be like, that is the most, like, unscientific way to explain something. But I honestly, it feels like it kind of makes sense in a way if you just think about, like, yeah, if like the objects are shifting in a room, everything has a vibration, everything has a characteristic, and everything also has meaning to us that we assign to it fully, right? Whether that's, like, made up in our minds or is actually true for the object itself. And because of that, I see that whenever things shift around us, they affect us on a collective scale. And sure, it's not like the biggest, you know, you're not going to feel like a fucking earthquake shift, but you are going to probably feel a subtle shift. And to me, it's really similar to just that analogy of people coming into a room and coming in and out of your house, or there's construction happening on the roof. Like, you're going to feel it in some form, shape, or pattern. And that's how I personally think of astrology. And I want to look more into it to understand, like, how it works on a quantum level, because I know there's stuff that has to do with, like, neutrinos and photons and how, like, energy is passed through matter. But yeah, just wanted to share that, because
I love
if you
that.
are slightly so if you're, like, slightly, like, I'm honestly skeptical of astrology, like, generally, even with human design, I'll be skeptical of it, and I'll be like, is this legit? Like, is this completely made up? But then A, I put it into practice, B, I just get more curious and ask questions about it, and I just end up seeing, like, it prove itself in some way or another. And then it's all just about the consciousness you put into it. Like, we're not outsourcing our fucking life to astrology or human design. It's, like, all filtered through your own experience, and it's the consciousness you put behind it. So I just wanted to share that analogy in case someone's like, oh, okay, I guess Pluto maybe is doing something.
Well, it is interesting to even think about like if you assign each planet as like a person and like them moving closer or going into certain, let's say like you could call the different signs, like different rooms they go into. Like Pluto would be the person that's all about like fucking ripping shit up and like causing deaths and rebirths and like this like whole revolutionary vibe, like just like that chaotic person that like triggers the F out of you.
Right.
Like that would be Pluto.
And it's like, yes, exactly. And it's like, oh, if they're about to go into a room with a lot of glass vases, like, oh, we should probably like be aware of that, you know, because they could fucking shatter some shit.
Yeah. And then also like the level of consciousness you're at is going to also, like how you're saying, affect how Mr. Pluto going into that room affects you. Like it all really is dependent on your presence, your level of consciousness, the way that you respond to energies, how connected you are to your intuition. Like these are all hacks to the system to not be so fucking rocked and swayed with every energetic change. Like you don't have to be a victim to astrological shifts, and you can actually use them to empower yourself. And I think that's where like the fun comes into astrology, is when you're like, oh, this energy is actually coming up, so how can I hone in on this and take advantage of it? So like with Pluto going into whatever house the transit is occurring within your own chart, the way you take advantage of this is by having awareness that there's going to be an upheaval. What's the word? Upheaval?
Upheaval, yeah.
Yeah, upheaval of like the lessons in that specific category of your life. So like if you notice patterns coming to the surface or like reoccurring like moments of discomfort within that category of your life, this is the energy that you get to take advantage of like, whoa, there's like a rapid fire energy of like death and rebirth within this category of my life. So I can use that to like hone in on like bringing limiting beliefs to the surface, or like trying even like riskier things within that category of your life to like see what happens. So there's ways that you can feel empowered by the shifts. So when you hear about fucking Pluto going into Aquarius, like how many fucking times are we gonna hear about this? Like you can feel empowered by it and not feel scared. And if there was anything we said that made you feel fear, please just like rethink the way. I want to kind of like reiterate again that this is not meant to induce fear. It's meant to empower you. I was listening to a podcast before we started recording this about Pluto going into Aquarius, and this girl was just like, it was just like all very fear-based. And I'm like, I don't want to subscribe to this. Like, I'm sure this can apply to people, but this is not the way I want to see this chapter. Like, even if you think about the way that, let's say, one person related to the whole COVID chapter and like think about the different ways that you could have related and corresponded to that energy, you could have seen it as like, this is fucking amazing, everyone's awakening, like shit's come to the surface, the veil is thinning. Or you could have been like, this is terrible, the forces that be are taking over, which like I totally went through that, but like
it's all about perspective. How you relate to it. 100%. Yeah. That's why it's like, even if you would argue like, oh, like the astrology stuff is all like symbolic, I would be like, that just proves it further, because we literally like operate under symbols. Like Carl Jung's work is literally all about how, depending on the meaning and symbolism that we place on objects and things that happen in our life, that's completely like how the subconscious works. So even if it is just based on characteristics that we associate with the planet, like that still has an effect on us, because that's how humans function. We are literally creatures of symbol and meaning.
Interesting. Wait, there was one other thing that I also wanted to add, that Pluto, you're not out of the woods yet with Pluto being in Capricorn. It actually will retrograde just in time for the elections, which is November. Really interesting. That
because structure, right?
Capricorn's all about like power and or like the structure. And it's just interesting to think about how it goes back into Capricorn for the election, which is when we're going to have like a huge shift in political structure. I don't know. It's just interesting how that happens.
Totally.
But yeah, that's all I had to say about all of that.
That is all.
All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. It really helps us out. Leave a review. We love you all. And we will see you next week. Bye, guys.
Yeehaw. Good luck. I'm kidding. Everyone's gonna be- Bye.
Bye.